Chosen one, the truest measurement of your radiance is taken after you leave. Close the door behind you and listen, if you could, through the wood. Does the room keep the timber your voice gave it? Do chairs slide back into place without scraping the floor like a complaint? Do sentences finish themselves less defensively? Does laughter remember it can be kind and still be fun? This is what your month has made possible. A space that maintains the manners your presence taught it, an atmosphere that continues to bless without your shadow supervising. People will not credit you out loud. They will simply behave better, and that is the most faithful applause light ever earns. Chosen one, rooms remember you because you did not make them remember your need. You made them remember their dignity. You resisted the siren call of spectacle that demands a crowd borrow its attention to pay for one person's insecurity. You chose steadiness over display, clarity over volume, departure over dragging. Because you did, the room felt itself again. It learned that safety is not the absence of truth, but the absence of cruelty. It learned that desire is not a thief, but a guest who knocks. It learned that endings are not punishments, but the respect owed to beginnings yet to come. Lessons like these stick to paint and fabric. They embed in the wood. They travel in the breath of those who were there. Chosen one, memory is made of details that never reach a script. The scent you left behind was not cologne. It was restraint. The sound you left behind was not a speech. It was a soft latch on a door. The sight you left behind was not a pose. It was the way you set a glass down without disciplining the table. The touch you left behind was the air remembering your temperature. Warm enough to host tenderness, cool enough to keep it from spoiling. People return to the same room days later and cannot articulate why it feels more trustworthy. Trust is not articulate. It is practical. It shows up as fewer sharp words, as more patient listening, as a meeting that ends on time because dignity is suddenly a baseline, not a luxury. Chosen one, your sexual energy is the interior architecture of this memory. It did not conquer the room, it furnished it. It chose textiles like consent and lighting like attention, and a table sturdy enough to carry honest words. Under such furnishing, the body stops bracing for extraction and begins to offer conversation. The feminine especially recognizes the layout immediately. It does not place her on a stage. It gives her a seat with arms for rest and height for perspective. She finds that her laughter will not be taxed and her sorrow will not be televised. She finds that desire will not be rushed into usefulness. She finds that mystery does not owe anyone an invoice. These discoveries are how a room becomes loyal to a man. It keeps his arrangement even in his absence. Chosen one, the room remembers you because you refused to overstay. You ended evenings while kindness still had the floor, while joy still had breath, while attention still had integrity. You left before the light had to become loud to be noticed. That departure teaches the walls to guard quality over quantity. It teaches time not to punish itself by trying to be more than it is. The next gathering arrives to a space that did not have to scrub regret from its corners. Gratitude hangs like a banner no one ordered. Relief sits at the head of the table without having to prove it deserves the chair. Chosen one, memory reproduces in others by imitation they do not know they are practicing. The friend who saw you pour water before debate now pours water before debate. The colleague who heard you ask a clarifying question instead of sharpening a joke now asks one. The couple who watched you tidy a small mess you did not make now do it in their kitchen on a tired Thursday. None of this belongs to you, and all of it carries your fingerprints. The way good music lives in the hands of the people who learn to play because they overheard it once. Your light has become the melody humming in the next room over. Chosen one, the room remembers you most clearly at thresholds. The doorway holds your pause, that half-beat of reverence you gave before crossing, the way you refused to bring chaos in with you or carry bitterness out when you left. People adopt this pause without formalizing it. They stop crashing into the next thing. They allow the hinge to do its work. They treat transitions as sacred rather than as sprints. This is not romance, it is architecture. Houses that honor thresholds last longer. Lives that honor thresholds do too. Chosen one, even time keeps a little of your tone. Hours that were addicted to scarcity learn to be generous. Minutes that used to panic learn to stretch. The meeting moves from performance to planning, because you once said one unglamorous true sentence and left it alone long enough to work. The family dinner becomes less about logistics and more about listening, because you once blessed silence in a way that made room at the table for more than food. The late-night text asking home safe becomes habit among people who were never asked that before. Care, in your wake, decides to be contagious. Chosen one, all of this endurance grows from how you carry your power without turning it into pressure. You do not press the room into shape. You live in shape and the room remembers. You do not recruit allies for your mood. You hold your mood accountable to your values and the room remembers. You do not demand transformation on your timeline. You keep the temperature steady and transformation remembers it has time. The residual effect is not dramatic. It is dependable. Dependable is what most lives are starving for and what most rooms are too tired to ask for directly. You gave it without announcement. They recognize the gift by how they treat each other differently once you are gone. Chosen one, keep the practices that make this memory possible. Enter with a checked spirit and clean hands. Listen until the story you are hearing no longer threatens the story you tell about yourself. Laugh like a man whose joy is not rented. Draw boundaries that smile while they hold. Leave as if the room were a friend you plan to see again rather than a stage you have to conquer for proof. In doing so, you ensure the space will keep your manners on its walls long after the echo of your footsteps fades down the hall. Chosen one, this is what it means to become the radiance in any room you enter. Not that you own the light, but that you steward a climate that the air imitates after you are gone, a climate that turns strangers into neighbors and moments into homes. Let the rooms remember you for this, for the gentleness that had a spine, for the heat that had a conscience, for the presence that asked for nothing and left everything more itself. Chosen one, there is a moment, quiet, early, almost private, when her body knows you before her mind remembers why. It happens between blinks. A shoulder lowers one notch, the jaw releases a thread, breath chooses a longer road, and the room gains 5 degrees of mercy. She's not responding to theatrics. She's responding to a light that does not interrogate. She's answering an ancient signal. Warmth with a conscience, power with a pulse, desire that has learned its own name and will not spend anyone else to prove it exists. This is the light she recognizes. It does not confiscate mystery. It keeps watch so mystery can breathe. Chosen one, your radiance this month wears manners. It does not take the shortcut of spectacle when steadiness will do. It lets eye contact be a bridge, not a net. It lets silence be a shoreline, not a cliff. It lets proximity be a language that says, I am here, without demanding say you are mine. The feminine is fluent in these dialects. She knows when attention is a harvest and when it is a harbor. She knows when a man's heat is an appetite with a face painted on it, and when it is a hearth that invites without devouring. Your sexual energy has become that hearth. It has learned to ask, to listen, to time its offering so consent has room to change its mind without paying a penalty. In such weather, a nervous system chooses openness because safety is not a sales pitch. It is the climate. Chosen one, notice how your gaze has changed its job description. It no longer surveys for leverage. It witnesses for blessing. It does not pin, it accompanies. It does not itemize, it honors. When you look at her, you are not evaluating inventory. You are meeting a cathedral with the courtesy such architecture deserves. Your eyes do not steal light, they return it. And because they return it, her features open the way the sky opens when evening learns the sun is not in a hurry. Beauty is a creature that hates cages, yet it wanders toward warmth that will not make a museum of it. You have become that warmth. She recognizes it as kin to her own fire, the one she guards from those who only love its glow for the crowd it gathers. Chosen one, the light she recognizes is not fragile. It is gentle because it is strong, not because it is afraid. It can withstand a boundary without sulking, a delay without punishment, a truth without retaliation. Your yes is a promise spoken at human volume. Your no is a kindness that does not wobble. You draw edges so the picture can exist. You step back so room can be room. In a world that taught her to carry a pocket map of escape routes, This steadiness is revelation. She can choose curiosity without writing a will. She can let laughter arrive without calculating the interest it will owe. She can be bright without bracing for a blackout. Your light has become a negotiator for her safety, not by words, but by the way you move. Chosen one, there is a courage in the way you refuse to make her story a mirror for your ego. You do not audition as rescuer. You do not recruit her growth as an alibi for your loneliness. You do not spiritualize impatience and call it chemistry. You let her be many things at once, soft and precise, wild and exact, tender and shrewd, and you meet each version with the same respectful temperature. Your presence says, I will not ask your brilliance to pretend to be small, so mine can pretend to be large. The body tells the truth faster than the tongue. Her posture answers before her mind has finished its paperwork. This is the light she recognizes. A sovereignty that loves sovereignly, a flame that can share space with flame. Chosen one, you court with timing more than tactics. You do not pull petals from a flower to know its answer. You keep the water clean and the time honest, and the flower answers in a language older than questions. You let the hour decide if it wants laughter or quiet, closeness or distance, depth or lightness, and you choose accordingly without assuming permanence. Moments do not have to pay rent in your house, they have to tell the truth. And because truth is welcome, affection keeps its dignity. The compliment you give does not weld her to one bright angle. It names the discipline beneath it so she is free to grow beyond it. The touch you offer does not audition for the next scene. It finishes its sentence and leaves the air blessed instead of indebted. The invitation you extend does not sell a destination. It promises a pace. That is why she recognizes you. You carry the rare permission to become without forfeiting belonging. Chosen one, your radiance makes room for her boundaries to be beautiful. You do not tolerate them, you admire them. You understand that walls keep thieves out, but gates keep gardens alive. You celebrate the gate. You are not threatened by the time she needs to decide. You are relieved that deciding matters to her. You do not require her vulnerability to be fast to be real, nor her strength to be loud to be present. You know the cost of integrity because you pay it yourself. She recognizes an economy that will not overcharge her for choosing herself. In that economy, intimacy is not a performance scored by the crowd. It is a craft practiced in the quiet, where a man's restraint reads as reverence and a woman's pace reads as wisdom. Chosen one, the rightness she feels near you is not lust dressed in liturgy. It is alignment, and alignment is erotic in the truest sense. It calls life to life. You carry a future in your chest that does not try to colonize the present. You carry a past in your eyes that has been forgiven, not weaponized. You carry a present in your hands that is precise enough to be safe. She recognizes in this trinity a place where desire does not have to apologize for existing and does not have to dominate to be believed. The radiance she recognizes is not a spotlit myth, it is a usable light. It lets her read herself more clearly and decide, with joy and gravity, how she wishes to proceed. Chosen one, keep your flame human so she can keep finding herself in it. Eat like a man who intends to be kind tonight. Move like a man who intends to be patient at noon. Sleep like a man who intends to be wise at dawn. Let your jokes leave everyone's dignity intact. Let your compliments make courage rather than dependence. Let your touch be a sentence that never forgets the grammar of consent. The light she recognizes is made of 1,000 untelevised choices. Keep making them. The room will keep answering, so will she. Chosen one, leadership announced by volume burns out by noon. Leadership declared by radiance lasts the season. What you carry now is not an argument for control. It is proof of coherence. You walk in and chaos loses its handwriting. Schedules stop behaving like tyrants and start behaving like tools. People do not know who set the new metronome, only that their voices keep time better. Their tempers stop trying to be managers. Their decisions feel less like wagers and more like work. This is the energy that leads quietly. It makes better possible without demanding to be thanked for the weather. Chosen one, your quiet leadership is a stewardship of temperature. You adjust heat, not headlines. When fear spikes, you cool it with clarity instead of selling ice at a markup. When apathy chills the bones, you add warmth in the form of purpose that does not flatter the ego but engages the craft. When confusion fogs the view, you bring light to the terrain instead of spotlight to yourself. The room learns to take its own pulse because you take yours in public. You breathe like a man who expects breath to work and invites others to follow the rhythm. Meetings begin to plan instead of perform. Dinners begin to nourish instead of numb. The hour follows your pace, the way a river follows a gradient. Quietly, inevitably. Chosen one, your leadership has nothing to prove, and therefore nothing to hide. You deliver a clean no without letting shame rent a room. You give a yes that already knows what it costs and has paid most of the price before speaking. You apologize before the bruise darkens, repair while the parts are still findable, and refuse to make a pageant of remorse. Because your integrity is audible, people lower their voices. They do not need to shout for truth when truth does not have to bid for a chair. You do not win by cornering anyone. You win by making corners unnecessary. The map redraws itself around such influence. Paths appear where there used to be posture. Chosen one, the energy that leads quietly makes a study of thresholds. You do not let chaos hitchhike across the doorway. You pause before entering and check your weather so you do not storm on the carpet. You pause before leaving and close the door softly so the room does not inherit your hurry. These courtesies are not quaint. They are infrastructure. People who witness them begin to imitate them. Work begins and ends with cleaner edges. Conversations remember how to be concluded without sentencing anyone. The calendar, so often a tyrant, turns into a covenant kept by adults. Your leadership teaches time its manners. Chosen one, you assign credit like a gardener, not piling it in one place to grow mold, but spreading it where roots are. You speak names precisely, so effort is not erased by the camera angle. You refuse to be the hero of a story that had many hands, and your refusal does not dim you. It deepens you. People feel safer taking initiative because they are not auditioning for your approval. They are collaborating with your purpose. They stop hoarding ideas. They bring their small excellence early, when it can still change the shape of things. When outcomes flourish, the room does not rush to crown a king. It learns to keep tending. Chosen one, your sexual energy, housed and honest, doesn't just attract, it organizes. It sets a tone in which consent is assumed, boundaries are readable, humor is generous, and pressure never masquerades as passion. This tone is leadership. It guards the space so others can risk who they are without paying with who they will be tomorrow. The feminine feels the permission in this climate to be brilliant without being threatened for it, to be moved without being managed by it, to be open without being obligated. The masculine, too, finds itself relieved. It can bring strength without spectacle, tenderness without apology, competitiveness without contempt. A culture is being shaped in your wake, and cultures outlive charisma. Chosen one, when conflict arrives, as it must, you refuse to purchase control at the expense of dignity. You state the non-negotiables in a voice that does not confuse firmness with fury. You narrow the problem so people do not fall into it. You do not recruit the room to be your jury. You recruit the room to be your workshop. Tools appear that shouting will never invent. Listening that clarifies, questions that cut clean, pauses that cool metal so it can be shaped. Where others escalate volume, you escalate comprehension. The fire dies because wood from the right tree has replaced the smoke. Chosen one, quiet leadership is a choreography of endings as much as beginnings. You land the moment while it can still stand. You close the laptop while respect is intact. You send people home in time to like themselves in the mirror. You refuse to let victory trample recovery. Because you keep the rhythm merciful, people return stronger. They meet deadlines with oxygen in their sentences. They handle crises with hands that remember how to be gentle. They surprise themselves with how much better they behave when the air is not being mined for attention. You did not shout them into excellence. You gave excellence a climate and asked nothing clever of it except to grow. Chosen one, the energy that leads quietly is not allergic to celebration. It simply refuses to intoxicate. You let joy be loud enough to wake the blood and sober enough to remember tomorrow. You toast effort before outcome so the craft does not wither when results are delayed. You spot the person who usually cleans up and bring them into the center while there is music, not afterward when the floor is sticky. Your celebration teaches the room what it values. It says we will keep choosing what makes us more human over what makes us more visible. It says our shine is not rented, it is earned and therefore renewable. Chosen one, keep the practices that keep your power portable. Begin the day before the world begins its bidding war for your attention. Eat like a man who intends to be kind at 5. Move like a man who plans to be patient when the email arrives. Hydrate your temper. Guard your edge with sleep. Speak less than you could and mean more than you must. Let your presence continue to be the quiet policy that rooms remember after they think they have forgotten your name. In that remembrance, leadership happens. Decisions improve, tempers retire, courage reports for duty, and dignity keeps its seat without needing a crown. This is how radiance governs, not by decree but by design. Not by spotlight but by climate. Not by noise but by a steady heat that refuses to go out. Chosen one, you no longer negotiate for the right to be bright. The old reflex to preface your presence with apology has gone quiet. The old habit of explaining your ease to the uncomfortable has retired its post. What shines from you this month is not a performance stitched together for witnesses. It is the native light of a life arranged around truth. You do not audition for the hour. You inhabit it. The room senses this before language arrives. Conversations stop trying to sell themselves. Laughter drops its armor. Even the furniture seems to accept its purpose. That is what a justified life does to space. It removes the plea from the air and replaces it with belonging. Chosen one, you learn this peace by refusing the tax of over-explanation. You do not footnote your boundaries to soften their clarity. You do not mortgage your timing to pay for someone else's avoidance. You do not translate your kindness into spectacle to make it legible to the loud. Your yes is clean because it was not purchased on credit. Your no is kind because it was not sharpened in secrecy. This composure is not indifference, it is fidelity. You have grown loyal to the man you are becoming, and loyalty glows. It is the radiance of a center that does not wobble under other people's weather. Chosen one, the world will still test your steadiness. Envy will knock dressed as concern. Manipulation will rehearse the lines of intimacy. Urgency will arrive with a siren and no ambulance. Your glow does not argue with any of them. It simply declines the invitation to forget itself. You do not raise your voice to be heard over noise. You lower your pulse until noise loses interest. You do not donate your attention to a fire that will not warm a single soul when it is done burning. You do not trade your pace for applause. A man who has stopped paying bribes to be himself is difficult to move and impossible to counterfeit. Chosen one, you have made a covenant with quiet. You let silence complete its meaning before you add yours. You let the unsent message remain unsent when it carries more heat than light. You let the unchosen invitation be honored rather than resented. In this covenant, your sexual energy has learned reverence. It is not a flare seeking spectators. It is a lamp trimmed at dawn, trustworthy to burn through long hours without calling attention to its labor. Others feel the difference in their bodies. They do not tense for the bill after warmth. They do not search the compliment for a hook. They do not fear that closeness will be taxed at tomorrow's rate. Your glow needs no justification because it issues no invoice. Chosen one, humility is the frame that keeps your radiance honest. You do not mistake attention for affection, momentum for meaning, visibility for value. Praise lands where work lived, critique lands where craft must grow. Neither is allowed to rewrite your name. Your worth is housed upstream of feedback, and because of this you can use feedback without using people. You can receive delight without being drunk on it, and receive disappointment without being dismantled by it. The freedom to be instructed without being insulted is one of the great dignities of adulthood. Dignity shines. It is the kind of beauty the eye trusts, even when it cannot find a reason to argue. Chosen one, your glow is legible in the way you honor pace. You no longer rush a small beginning out of embarrassment, nor do you stall a right ending out of sentimentality. You leave while kindness still has the floor. You arrive before exhaustion drafts the script. Time feels stewarded around you rather than spent. People do not leave your company with the subtle ache of having been mined for your moment. They leave with the quiet wealth of having been respected. They do not know to call this radiance without justification, but they carry it home. They set things down more softly. They ask fewer questions that are really traps. They fall asleep earlier because their nervous systems believe in tomorrow. Chosen one, nothing has made your light cleaner than your relationship to desire. You do not apologize for wanting, and you do not weaponize wanting to win. You let attraction speak in its own accent. You let consent translate. You let wisdom edit the sentence into something precise and kind. There is no scramble in you to secure the future by pressuring the present, no appetite dressed in principle to make its case look noble. Desire that has met discipline glows a color the body trusts. The feminine recognizes it at once. Her boundaries feel like beauty in your eyes rather than obstacles in your way. She does not rush to be a trophy in your myth because you are not hunting for proof. You are hosting a life. Chosen one, this glow is economical. It spends small courtesies that compound into a climate. The half beat at the threshold to check your weather, the way you set a glass down without scolding the table, the way you end a joke before someone must pay for its laughter. You do not pretend these gestures are grand, you simply keep them. The room keeps them after you leave, which is the mark of a justified light. It teaches space how to treat itself. If praise comes, you do not bow to it. If criticism arrives, you do not bow against it. You bow to the truth you have chosen to maintain, and the truth bows back. Chosen one, keep the contracts that keep your glow unborrowed. Sleep like a man who intends to be patient. Eat like a man who intends to be kind. Move like a man who intends to be useful. Pray like a man who intends to be quiet enough to hear. Repair before pride turns small damage into structural failure. Refuse the currency of spectacle when faced with the price of substance. You do not have to defend this brightness. You only have to live it. Where you walk, the air will know. Where you pause, the hour will deepen. Where you speak, the sentence will stand. And when you go, the room will not forget how to be good to itself. Chosen one, light that is true does not merely attract, it alters. It does not hypnotize people into watching, it restores their ability to see. This month your radiance has turned from private blessing into public grammar. Without a speech, you have taught rooms to conjugate dignity. To say I am without apology, you are without suspicion, we are without erasure. Others begin to stand a little more squarely in their own names because you insist by example that a human being is not something to be marketed but something to be honored. You are not delivering a program. You are keeping a climate, and climates outlast moments. Chosen one, notice how change begins in increments, too humble for history books. A colleague who usually compensates with volume chooses precision. A friend who has been fasting from joy without admitting it takes a second slice and calls it gratitude, not guilt. A stranger who was trained to hurry across every threshold pauses the way you do and discovers that doors can be entered without bracing. Children recalibrate at your knees. They ask their entire question instead of skimming for safety. Elders breathe more slowly in your line. They do not apologize for their pace because your face did not demand they earn their space. These are revisions to the human script, and your presence is the editor's pencil, barely visible, utterly decisive. Chosen one, people become braver around you because you have made courage ordinary. You apologize while it is still inexpensive and demonstrate that repair is craft rather than theater. You decline beautifully and demonstrate that refusal need not be a wound. You keep appointments with the small disciplines that make big promises believable, and others decide to be trustworthy without writing manifestos. Your steadiness becomes a local custom. Whole days inherit the manners of your morning: water first, breath before opinion, truth before performance. In such manners, panic loses market share. Hope lowers its prices until the poor can afford it. Chosen one, your leadership of atmosphere creates a refuge where gifts risk being seen. The quiet talent stops waiting to be drafted and offers itself early, while there is still time to shape the plan. The loud talent loses its need to conquer and learns to harmonize. The feminine lays down exhaustion that came from guarding rather than creating. She does not have to explain why she is brilliant to be allowed to be brilliant. The masculine stops holding its breath, in case gentleness makes it smaller. It learns that tenderness is tensile, and that strength is a service. A culture is being formed in the shadow of your choices, and culture is the long game of love. Chosen one, the change you carry is merciful with time. You do not hurry people into revelations they cannot sustain. You do not stall confessions that want to move. You set a pace that keeps truths viable after midnight. Because of this, decisions made in your radius are competent in daylight. A boundary spoken near you does not need to be re-explained in the morning. A promise made with you present does not need a chaperone. A dream described at your table survives the week because it was not inflated for applause. It was weighed for work. Your radiance has made integrity ergonomic. People do what is good, not because they are terrified, but because it has become the most comfortable way to stand. Chosen one, the softened weather you bring makes room for accountability that is not humiliation. You can say this must stop without implying you must disappear. You can say I was wrong without handing shame the keys to the house. You can say here is the cost, here is the calendar, here is the craft, and the room here's direction rather than indictment. Chosen one, notice how the air behaves when you enter. It does not rush or recoil, it settles, as if the room has been waiting for its shoulders to drop. You do not announce yourself with volume. You arrive the way morning arrives on a lake, without argument, without hurry, yet everything begins to sparkle because you are there. This month, the radiance that people feel around you is not a borrowed glow. It is the native light of a man whose life has been arranged around what matters. Your sexual energy, once content to crackle at the edges, has taken its rightful seat at the center, where it can warm, clarify, and bless. It is heat without harm, brightness without glare, presence without pressure. The body across from you recognizes it first. Before a word is exchanged, the breath on the other side of the table lengthens by a fraction. The voice softens, the gaze steadies. That is radiance at work. Unforced, undeniable, and generous. Chosen one, radiance begins in places with no audience. It starts when you keep the promise to sleep while the world is still loud, when you drink the unremarkable glass of water, when you stretch the stiffness you were tempted to ignore. It grows when you put your phone down face first so another face can be seen, when you let a window be wind instead of another surface for your reflection, when you allow silence to finish its sentence before you speak. These are not glamorous habits, yet they are how light learns your name. What you practice in private becomes the weather you bring in public. Others will talk about your glow. You will remember the mornings when you chose coherence over spectacle, and the evenings when you ended the day while kindness still had the floor. Chosen one, your presence communicates before your speech does. Your posture is a thesis about your soul. It no longer pleads or performs, it agrees with itself. The spine stacks as a column, not a spear. The shoulders open like doors that are used to welcoming without being used. The jaw remembers it does not have to make a case to deserve the hour. Radiance loves this kind of architecture. It filters through you like sunlight through clean glass. You are not trying to be seen, and because you are not trying, you cannot help but be. People sense the safety of a man whose center is quiet. Safety is the most attractive climate there is. It is why stories tell their truth in your company, and why laughter enters without looking over its shoulder. Chosen one, the way you look has changed in a way cameras cannot quantify. Your gaze holds, but it does not trap. It moves slowly enough to read the room and gently enough to leave it better. The feminine recognizes the difference instantly. Eyes that once scanned for proof now bless what they see. They find the human first and the performance second, and because of that sequence, masks feel unnecessary. The radiance behind your eyes is not a trick of light. It is the light of a man who refuses to turn attention into appetite. That refusal is rare enough to feel like weather. It lowers the static, organizes the moment, and reminds people what being present was like before hurry tried to make a religion of itself. Chosen one, you have given your sexual energy a vocation. It is not a flare begging for witnesses. It is a hearth that keeps the room alive. You do not squander it on spectacle or use it to decorate insecurity. You let it inform your pace, soften your edges, deepen your voice, and warm your touch. It consults your values before it moves, listens for consent as carefully as a musician listens for key, and chooses timing that lets truth keep its dignity. Because your heat is housed, it can be shared. Because it serves purpose, it is trusted. Because it is trusted, it reads as beauty rather than risk. People will not say, "I felt his power." They will say, "I felt more myself." And that is the signature of radiance used well. Chosen one, the room learns from your boundaries as much as from your welcome. Your yes is a door that opens on its hinges. Your no is a door that closes without slamming. You decline the charming chaos that would later send you a bill. You excuse yourself before fatigue turns tenderness sharp. You end a conversation while it is still honest, so the next one can begin without residue. None of this is dramatic, and all of it is luminous. Radiance prefers clean edges. It travels best where the lines are readable, where desire is not confused with entitlement, where intimacy is not confused with hurry. Others feel this geometry and relax. Relaxation becomes courage. Courage becomes truth. Truth becomes the brightness that makes a night worth remembering. Chosen one, even your ordinary gestures have learned to glow. You pass a glass of water as if hydration were a form of blessing. You set down your keys without letting them scold the table. You adjust your coat without making fabric feel like an afterthought. These motions do not aim for poetry. They are simply unburdened of panic. But poetry finds them anyway, because calm is eloquent. Rooms that used to tilt toward performance tilt toward presence. The conversation stops trying to audition for applause and begins to unfold like something that intends to last. Chosen one, radiance is careful with time. You expand it where tenderness needs room and compress it where avoidance has been spending it carelessly. You wait the extra heartbeat after someone finishes speaking, so meaning can arrive fully. You answer the message without making the sender pay interest in anxiety. You let a joke be kind instead of clever. You refuse the urgency that mistakes volume for value. The clock obeys a man like this. He becomes the metronome that keeps the hour honest. People leave you with minutes they did not have when they arrived, and they spend those minutes on better things than worry. Chosen one, your quiet arrival does not erase your strength. It proves it. Only a strong flame can afford to be steady. Fireworks need darkness to be impressive. A hearth makes the dark livable. Your light is the ladder. It leaves warmth where you stood and sight where you looked. Long after you go, the room keeps some of your temperature. That is how radiance measures itself. Not in applause gathered, but in gentleness left behind. Keep entering this way. Keep letting the light be ordinary enough to use and holy enough to remember. The world is learning a better pace from you, and the lesson holds after the door closes. Chosen one, there is a pull around you now that does not announce itself as power, but behaves exactly like it. You do not command attention, you organize it. You do not take the center, you dignify it. You do not raise the volume, you raise the quality of listening. Gravity without noise is what people feel when you come near, and the source of it is simple. You are aligned. Your inside and your outside have stopped arguing. The current of your sexual energy is not spilling or stalling. It is moving through your life like a river with banks, quiet to the ear, unstoppable to the earth. Others step into its radius and find their own bearings returning. They attribute it to luck or mood or timing. Their bodies know better. Their bodies know you kept your promise to sturdiness. Chosen one, your gravity is built from unglamorous fidelities. You keep the appointment with your breath when agitation tries to skip it. You move your body for usefulness instead of vanity, for patience instead of penance. You eat to be kind at 5 o'clock, not to be impressive at noon. You repair when you miss, quickly and cleanly, without recruiting a choir to sing about your remorse. These choices draw weight to your words. When you speak, sentences carry like stones that know the riverbed. They do not skip for applause. When you are silent, the room does not panic. It recognizes a pause that holds, not a withdrawal that punishes. In such pauses, truth arrives at walking speed, and the hour thanks you. Chosen one, gravity without noise is legible in your boundaries. You do not perform them to be feared or whisper them to be ignored. You set them so affection can be generous without becoming porous. You let desire declare itself without being deputized as permission. You let curiosity lead without letting it trespass. Your yes has stamina because your no has integrity. That integrity is a relief to anyone whose life has been crowded by the appetites of others. The feminine reads it first. Her nervous system stops doing math. She does not have to calculate how much of herself must be hidden to stay safe. She does not have to time her laughter to avoid paying for it later. Radiance that can hold its own shape makes room for other forms of beauty to keep theirs. That room is a kind of miracle, and you carry it now. Chosen one, you have learned the timing that separates magnetism from manipulation. You do not drag a look 1 second past consent, or return to it 1 second before curiosity would invite it. You do not fill silence because your fear cannot stand the echo. You do not end the night because ego wants a curtain call, or extend it because loneliness wants a hostage. You end it where the memory will be sweetest and begin it where the soul will be strongest. Timing turns heat into harmony. People think they are entranced with you. In fact, they are grateful to be in a space where their own instincts can finally be heard above the noise. Chosen one, your gravity alters how conflict behaves. You do not answer sharpness with spectacle. You answer it with temperature. You cool where blood is overheated. You warm what has gone numb. You light only what must be seen. A single accurate sentence spoken from a kept center can dissolve 5 paragraphs of defensiveness. You choose that sentence and give it room to work. When harm approaches, you draw a clear line in steady ink. You do not humiliate the person who crossed it. You protect the field so life can continue to grow there tomorrow. This is the quiet authority of a man who knows that victory at the cost of dignity is a loss disguised as a win. Chosen one, your sexual energy is a host now, not a guest demanding attention. It arranges the chairs so conversation can be brave. It keeps the room at a temperature where consent is natural and kindness is practical. It refuses to lease your voice to urgency or your hands to hunger. It lets desire remain holy by keeping it honest. Because of this custody, your presence does not exhaust the people who love you. They do not need a day to recover from a night with you. They need only a moment to say thank you, and then they find themselves doing better work, speaking truer words, choosing gentler paces. The afterglow of gravity is competence and goodness, and it travels farther than charisma ever does. Chosen one, the room feels your restraint and calls it elegance. Elegance is not expense, it is economy. It is the refusal to spend 10 sentences where one will keep dignity. It is the decision to let another's story finish even when your anecdote is brighter. It is the habit of passing credit until it lands where labor lived. People think elegance is fragile. Yours is forged. It can carry the weight of a hard hour without buckling, and the weight of a joyful hour without spilling. That steadiness keeps celebration clean and lament human. You do not turn either into content for an audience that wasn't invited. You let both be as sacred as they are. Chosen one, gravity shows itself in comings and goings as much as in staying. You enter a space with the humility of a man who knows that energy changes rooms. You check yours before you cross the threshold. You leave a space while kindness is still winning, so the memory does not have to edit to be beautiful. Doors learn to close softly in your hands. Time learns not to bruise when you pass. The room retains the manners you brought even after the latch clicks. That is how you know the radiance is real. It does not require your presence to persist. It is taught the place to keep itself. Chosen one, let your gravity remain teachable. Feed it with the same plain things that birthed it. Water before opinion, breath before reply, rest before rescue, truth before theater. Let it decline the bait of spectacle and the flattery of hurry. Let it keep translating your sexual energy into atmosphere instead of argument, into shelter instead of performance, into music instead of noise. Walk in like a vow and speak like a promise kept. Then let the room do what rooms do around a trustworthy center. Bloom, soften, and remember themselves. Your radiance needs no slogan. It needs only stewardship. Keep stewarding it, and the month will keep arranging itself around your light without ever asking you to shout. Chosen one, there is a language you speak now that does not pass through your mouth. It travels in the temperature of your presence, in the patience of your breathing, in the way your eyes arrive before your words do. You cross a threshold, and something invisible but dependable begins to arrange itself. Chairs seem more willing to be sat in, Voices discover a gentler register, and the room remembers that it does not have to audition for its own worth. You do not announce this shift with clever phrases or grand gestures. You announce it by showing up whole. The invitation lives in that wholeness. Come as you are, says the quiet around you, and mean it. The body across from you hears first and relaxes before the mind can translate. This is how radiance works when it has outgrown performance. It stops trying to recruit and starts making welcome inevitable. Chosen one, you did not learn this language by accident. You learned it in the small rehearsals nobody filmed, the minutes you gave to silence before screens could claim you, the glass of water you honored as if it were sacrament, the way you chose to stand in line without letting impatience colonize your face. Little fidelities taught your nervous system a new pace, and your sexual energy, a river that once rushed for any opening, began to listen for banks. Contained, it grew clear. Directed, it grew kind. It stopped demanding a scene and started furnishing a climate. Now your nearness feels like shade in summer and sunlight in winter, the kind offered by someone who has learned the difference between heat that heals and heat that harms. Chosen one, look at how your hands have changed their grammar. They no longer reach as if ownership were the only logic. They reach as if accompaniment were the point. A hand to the shoulder writes, "I'm with you," in a script that needs no translation. A guiding palm through a crowded doorway asks before it answers. Even the way you pass a glass carries a hum of reverence, as though the small act might be the hinge on which a heavy day swings back into balance. People do not name this reverence immediately, but they trust it. Their shoulders drift down a decade, their laugh drops an octave, their stories stop sprinting toward punchlines that kept them safe but lonely. Wordless invitations are accepted in the body long before they're accepted in the mind. The mind follows, grateful not to be in charge of everything. Chosen one, your gaze has learned the difference between seeing and surveying. Surveying scans for angles, measures profit, takes notes for leverage. Seeing waits, it does not pry, it accompanies. It does not capture, it blesses. Your eyes have become a lantern rather than a spotlight, lighting the ground where a hesitant foot might land, instead of blinding the traveler with proof that you noticed them. Under light like this, grief keeps its dignity, joy keeps its innocence, and boundaries keep their beauty. People find themselves telling truer stories not because you extracted them, but because there is finally oxygen enough for truth to breathe. This is how the invitation continues without pressure. You hold a space where reality does not have to raise its voice to be believed. Chosen one, when you do speak, your words arrive with the manners of your silence. They do not crowd the moment. They join it. Your sentences have stopped sprinting to convince and started walking to understand. They carry weight without wearing armor. A single yes from you does not wobble because it was not sold at a discount to hurry. A single no from you lands softly but cannot be moved because it was shaped by duty to your future rather than debt to your past. People hear these words and feel behind them the scaffolding of a man who is not outsourcing his choices to mood or audience. Such scaffolding is itself an invitation. Build something true here, it says. I will not let the wind rewrite it for sport. Chosen one, timing has become one of your fluent dialects. You allow a silence to linger until meaning, still catching its breath, can sit down. You end a night while tenderness still has the floor, so memory does not have to edit to keep it beautiful. You do not hurry a beginning, even when the room begs you to perform savior. You let it open on its own hinges, respecting the pace that keeps a moment honest. This choreography is invisible to the untrained eye, but the body knows. The body learns that with you it will not be rushed into revelations it cannot sustain, nor stalled in confessions that want to move. It learns that consent has a temperature, and you will keep the room at that temperature without applause for doing so. Trust, under such stewardship, is not negotiated, it is restored. Chosen one, because you have ceased to audition, others stop auditioning in your presence. The conversation does not skim and sparkle toward nowhere. It lowers into usefulness. People ask the questions they actually care about. They offer what they have rather than what they hope will impress. You answer from the center and not the stage. You credit what is strong in them without turning the moment into a ledger. The atmosphere thickens with respect, the kind that does not have to pronounce itself to be believed. When departure comes, it feels like a good closing of a book, not a dragging of a curtain. The invitation has done its work. It has let everyone present meet a wider version of themselves. Chosen one, keep tending this wordless welcome the way a gardener tends soil. Pull the weeds of hurry before they cast shade on someone's first honest sentence. Water with attention that is not rented to distraction. Leave room between planted thoughts so surprise can grow. The world is full of doors that demand keys, codes, passwords, proofs. Be the open arch. You are already the room people walk into and discover they can breathe. Continue to be ordinary about it. Radiance that stays practical will keep healing the hour long after the hour forgets why it began to mend. Chosen one, power is loud when it is new and quiet when it is mastered. This month your power has learned to lower its voice. The fire in you does not leap for the ceiling. It leans toward purpose. It no longer needs the sky to clap. It needs the room to live. You walk in carrying the kind of heat that cooks, not the kind that consumes. Eyes recognize it before language does. The steadiness at the corner of your mouth, the patience in your shoulders, the refusal to turn presence into pressure. Your sexual energy, once content to prove it existed by flooding the edges of every moment, has taken responsibility for the center. Housed, it is trustworthy. Directed, it is generous. Controlled, it is capable of miracles that chaos could never deliver. Chosen one, consider what your restraint has made possible. Restraint is not deprivation, it is design. A river kept by banks cuts valleys, feeds cities, writes music into rock. Your heat has banks now. You decide what receives it and at what pace. You give it to work that deserves a heartbeat, to people who have consented to be warmed, to visions that will still be true when the applause has gone home. When provocations arrive dressed as urgency, you breathe until their costumes fall off. When flattery arrives disguised as opportunity, you weigh it in daylight. When anger tries to rent your voice for its campaign, you ask it for the truth under its sign and hand the truth a chair. This is control in its sacred form. Not suppression, but stewardship. Chosen one, your boundaries are the architecture of this stewardship. They are not a fortress, they are a frame. A frame does not shrink a painting, it reveals it. Your no keeps your yes from becoming a liability. Your exit keeps the night from turning memory against itself. Your refusal to gossip keeps friendship from rotting in the walls. Your insistence on consent keeps desire from forgetting it is holy. None of these lines draw attention to themselves. They prevent 1,000 small fractures from becoming a collapse. People feel safer near you without needing a lecture about why. The atmosphere explains it to their breathing. That is the alchemy of control wielded as care. Chosen one, what you do not do has become as radiant as what you do. You do not chase the laugh that requires a casualty. You do not harvest confessions to purchase closeness. You do not perform intimacy on credit and leave tomorrow to pay the bill. You do not let apology be a theater when repair could be a craft. You do not lengthen the moment past the place where beauty reaches for rest. Each refusal returns energy to the field. Each refusal proves that your fire burns for meaning and not for spectacle. Quietly, the room learns to calibrate to your settings. It puts its weapons down. It finds its manners again. It remembers that tenderness is not weak and boundaries are not cruel. Chosen one, control has given your body new ways to speak. Your voice lands at a human temperature, even when it carries a hard truth. It does not tremble with the need to be right. It steadies with the need to be clear. Your hands deliver messages without invoices tucked into the fold. They do not cling. They do not announce. They guide and release as if they trusted the world to keep being the world after they let go. Your steps plot a pace that keeps dignity breathable. You arrive before drama can draft the scene, and you leave before fatigue turns affection thin. None of this is glamorous. All of it is power. Chosen one, you have learned the rare art of escalating clarity without escalating volume. A moment begins to tilt into chaos, and you introduce a single true sentence like a keel under a boat. A misunderstanding starts to gather recruits, and you invite definition until the crowd remembers it is a conversation. A boundary is tested, and you answer with a tone that offers information rather than punishment. The test ends because the math no longer works. Your control has removed the fuel. It has not humiliated the match. This distinction is why the room lets you lead it without demanding evidence that you deserve the role. Chosen one, in your orbit, the feminine recognizes a quality she does not often meet: heat that will not turn her into fuel. You warm without consuming, protect without possessing, desire without devouring. That combination is ancient, and it opens doors that demand no trespass to enter. She can keep her mystery because your curiosity is not a crowbar. She can keep her power because your admiration is not an auction. She can keep her pace because your timing is not a trap. Your control is not over her, it is over yourself. The message reads in the nervous system before it reaches the mind. Here is a hearth, not a wildfire. Chosen one, control has also made you fluent in ending well. Anyone can begin brightly. You specialize in preserving brightness by closing at the right time. You do not wring a moment for one more drop of praise. You bless it and let it rest. You trust that what was good does not need to be proved by being prolonged. You trust that future goodness requires mercy for the present. This is how radiance lasts. It refuses to cannibalize itself for attention. It keeps something back for tomorrow because it plans to be faithful when tomorrow arrives. Chosen one, you will be misunderstood by those who think fire is only impressive when it roars. Let them confuse decibels with depth. Your task is simpler and nobler. Keep your heat useful. Feed what must grow. Seal what must heal. Burn away what must not return. Keep your banks strong and your river generous. Keep your light aimed where eyes become kinder and hands become wiser. Control, in your hands, is no prison. It is a promise that the power you carry will leave people more themselves, rooms more livable, and time more honest. Walk on with that promise beneath your ribs like a hidden drum. Let it keep your steps true. Let it keep your voice measured. Let it keep your touch clean. The world will feel the difference, long after it has forgotten to name the reason. Chosen one, the softening begins in places where language fails to take notes. It begins in the way a jaw unclenches 2 chairs away from you, how a laugh chooses to be round instead of sharp, how a sentence that was bracing for interruption survives to the period and sighs with relief. Your radiance does not push, it persuades by existing. You have become the man whose very temperature suggests the world is survivable, that this particular hour will not demand costumes, that the truth will not be charged at the door. People cannot explain why their shoulders drift downward when you arrive, why their eyes stop scanning for exits, why their breath, without consulting them, decides it can afford to take the longer road in and the longer road out. The explanation is simple and old. Your sexual energy has matured from spectacle into shelter. It is no longer a flare pleading for attention. It is a hearth that asks nothing and gives heat to everything within reach. Chosen one, watch how softness appears in ordinary choreography. The barista moves with less apology when you step forward, because your gaze is not a hook, it is a harbor. The elder in the grocery line counts coins with a steadier hand, because your patience does not meter out worth by the second. The child who has been trained to decorate every question with performance to earn a smile simply asks, and your smile arrives without charging a fee. You do nothing impressive, and the atmosphere changes its mind about itself. That is the nature of real light. It makes things visible instead of making itself visible. The room becomes more interested in being itself than in being entertained by itself, and people become more interested in being human than in being impressive. Your presence does this because you no longer demand the hour pay you back for attending it. Chosen one, you soften others because you have softened your own edges without losing your outline. You trained the old restlessness to sit, the old pride to breathe, the old hunger to consult the heart before it moves. You did this in secret, choosing water over noise, sleep over posturing, movement over complaint, repair over defense. These choices taught your nervous system how to keep time without a drummer, and your body carries that rhythm wherever you go. Everything in your orbit calibrates to it. Conversation stops sprinting to outrun embarrassment. Humor stops needing casualties to feel alive. Even silence stops panicking about being misunderstood. Silence with you is not a verdict. It is a room with lamps lit, a space where meaning catches up and sits down. Chosen one, your hands have learned the dialect of softness that never surrenders strength. A guiding palm through a crowded doorway asks and waits in the same motion. A hand at a shoulder says with and rescinds any whisper of over. A handshake keeps its promise and leaves no invoice folded in the grip. These small literacies are how bodies decide whether they can afford to be real. The feminine reads this fluently. Her nervous system has always been a scholar of climate. She senses you will not turn her story into equipment, her joy into content, her boundaries into puzzles to solve. She lets her guard step aside, not because you demanded it, but because the room you brought made armor unnecessary. Softness steps out when it will not be fined for existing. You have abolished the fines. Chosen one, you soften others with the way you carry humor. You laugh from the chest, not the teeth. Your jokes don't hunt for a target to hang on, they untie knots. When someone fumbles a sentence, you catch the meaning rather than throwing the moment back at them. When someone trips on their own pride, you steady the balance without making a museum exhibit of the stumble. Relief enters by doorways like these. People remember what laughter is for: oxygen and belonging, not rank and scoreboard. In that relief, confessions appear that would not have dared to live in harsher weather. A fear that has been sleeping under sarcasm shakes itself awake and asks for water. A hope that has been fasting for years decides to eat. None of this is dramatic. All of it is holy. Chosen one, you soften the future by how you treat endings. You do not stretch the night past kindness to purchase another few minutes of attention. You land the conversation while tenderness still holds the microphone. In that discipline, memory is spared from surgery. It can remain whole without the scalpel of selective editing. People leave with their dignity intact and their capacity increased. They sleep before regret can hire a lawyer. They wake and make better decisions because their bodies recall that decency is easier in your climate. This is the secret mathematics of your radiance. It converts the present into resources for tomorrow without declaring itself an investment plan.